Can you see it? Can you see the slide?
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be here. Actually, it's an interesting transition. So, I was one of those kids that went to a public school in the Philippines. I was born in the Philippines. I was when I was 12. And in my earlier life, I was in a public school in Zambales, which is a province. And it was the kind of school where if there wasn't enough chalk, there wouldn't be a class. Just think about that. If there's no chalk, there's no class. So my mother and my brother, who moved to America, decided that they were going to support my mother so I could go to a private school. So that's what happened. And when I turned 12, decided to come get me from the Philippines. So my mom gave me up when I was 12, and I got on a plane and I got to California, talking like this with a very thick Filipino accent. And then when I was 16, I found out that the green card that my lolo had given me was fake. So that's how I found out that I was undocumented, and that's what like what Filipinos call PNP. You all heard the term, which means tago ng tago, which means hiding in hiding. So that's what I did. I was 16, I'm now 32, and I spent basically about a decade of my life hiding, but hiding in a very public way. Because I found out that to be undocumented means not having papers, I decided that my name was going to be on the paper. So I became a journalist. I wrote for the San Francisco Chronicle, the Philadelphia Daily News, and the Washington Post. And then after about 14 years of lying and living in secret and living in fear, even of my own community, because unfortunately our own Filipino-American community can't talk about this issue, or refuse to talk about this issue the way that we should, I decided that I had had enough of this and that I was going to come out for the second time. And how do I come out in a big way? So this was the big way. Isn't that a horrible photo? So, in the New York Times Magazine, I wrote a 4,000-word essay, basically admitting to everything. The fraudulent social security card that I used, the fraudulent ID that I used to get a driver's license, the fraudulent passport that my lawyer got for me, basically everything that a lawyer told me not to do, I wrote in the essay. So this came out in 2 summers ago, and I sat at my apartment in Union Square, I live right around here, waiting for somebody to call me, to say, hey, what's up? Because after this happened, I did did your own kind of media swirl, the Colbert Report, CNN, Fox News. I started traveling around the country, and yet no one contacted me, which was really kind of surprising to me. And as not the government. So as I traveled around the country, what was more interesting was how many undocumented Filipinos I was meeting. I don't know if you know this. Out of the 11 million undocumented people, about 1.2 million are actually Asian. And the predominant statistic out of the 1.2 million is actually Filipinos. About 300 to 400,000 undocumented Filipinos that we know. So I would meet like undocumented students in Chicago, and Florida, and South Carolina, and started realizing that again, like this is not an issue that we as a community like to talk about. So I decided that I had to do something else that was different. So I actually got just imagine 35 undocumented young people flying to New York for a photo shoot in the meatpacking district so we can all stand on the cover of Time magazine saying that we are Americans, just not legally. So there we are. And as I traveled around the country as a walking uncomfortable conversation, that's me crashing a Mitt Romney rally holding that sign. I get asked a lot of questions. I get asked a lot of questions like, why don't you just make yourself legal? Because I'm a masochist and this is like so much more fun. They ask questions like, what do you mean you can't get in a line somewhere? They just think all I gotta do is show up at an office and fill out a form and then wait, right? What do you mean your mother can't come here? Can't she get a tourist visa? Well, because my mother did not graduate college and she doesn't own property. So unlike being like a woman from France or Germany that can just come to the United States and, spend a weekend shopping at Bloomingdale's and see the Book of Mormon, Filipinos, if you don't have money, you don't have education, can't just come here as a tourist. So these are the kind of questions that I would get asked. I decided about 2 years ago, before I even publicly outed myself, that I was going to document this, that I was going to chronicle whatever it was I was going through. I decided that I was going to do a documentary on the Dream Act. And so I started filming. But a year into the documentary, it changed. The tone of the documentary changed. And the title of the documentary actually is Documented, a film by a documented American. That card that you see there is the fake green card that my Lolo bought for me for $4,300. I used to be so ashamed of that fake green card because I hated my grandfather for doing what he did. I didn't understand it. I hated him for not thinking it through. I didn't understand why he thought I could just marry a woman and get a citizenship and be done with it. I just resented that card. And in doing this film, I decided that, as I've grown older, I got to be more proud of it, and that I was going to put it on the poster of the film in honor of him. And this documentary, actually, the main producer is Sean Parker, the guy who co-founded Napster. I convinced him, thankfully, to produce the film. The film travels from Iowa to Alabama to Florida, across the country, and then it actually goes to the Philippines. I came to this country on August 3rd, 1993, and I haven't seen my mother since. I've been here 20 years. And I'm actually going to show you a clip. You're going to be one of the few people. I've only had 2 screenings of this film. I'm going to show you a clip of when I crashed the Mitt Romney rally in Iowa in December 2011. Oh, actually, wait a second. I'm sorry. I have much time. This is how the documentary begins. These are the first 2 sentences of the documentary. Growing up in the Philippines, I always knew I was going to America. America seemed inevitable. And I think these are important lines because we must be aware of our own history, what colonialism and imperialism has done to our country and why people are here. Right? The fact that if I had actually had grandfathers who fought during the Spanish-American War, I could have been grandfathered in as a U.S. citizen because back then the Philippines, like Puerto Rico, was a U.S. territory. Right? What does America's foreign policy and economic policies have to do with Filipinos and our families moving to this country? Documented and undocumented. That's a big question. And frankly, as a community, I don't think we think about that enough. So here's the clip.
This was a country where individuals who pursued education as much as they could and worked hard and were willing to take risks would be able to create enterprises that would lift them and provide rewards for them and lift the entire nation. And we used our prosperity to provide for freedom for ourselves and to help provide freedom to others. No other nation on earth has done so much to provide freedom to others as the United States of America. There's nothing wrong with America that needs transforming. I want to restore America. I want to turn around America. Yes, sir. Do you have a plan on the part two of immigration? Because I believe there's immigrants here illegally, they're honest, they're trying to work, they're doing right things. There's those people out there. Do you have a plan that could assist or help them in their need rather than just rounding everybody up, take them carte blanche, which I think is just as wrong as ends. So,
yeah, my view is people who have come here illegally should not be treated with favoritism in becoming permanent residents or citizens of the United States, relative to those who waited in line patiently in their own countries. So that's the principle. That's the principle. And for those who have come here illegally, they might have a transition time to allow them to set their affairs in order and then go back home and get in line with everybody else. And if they get in line, they apply to become a citizen or get a green card, they'll be treated like everybody else. They start at the back of the line, not the front of the line. That, in my view, is the course that we're going to have to take.
I'm Jose. Nice to meet you. No, I do not.
Are you in line? I didn't see you.
No, but sir, there's no line. I was born when I was 12. I didn't know it, I think since I was 16. My grandparents were American citizens, didn't tell me. So I've been here. I've been paying taxes since I was 18. I just want to be able, as you said, to get legal to get in the back of the line somewhere.
And I think Romney made a point.
Yeah.
We want the highly intelligent immigrants here.
Here is documented. There's no way for you to get in the process.
Go to Mexico. You would be.
I'm Filipino. Philippines, yeah.
Go then.
Yeah.
You might expect I'm legal.
Because there's no way, sir. Why? We sort of Washington Post, I work also across the Washington Post. And there's no way for somebody like me to get legal. And this has been my home.
We have a daughter-in-law who came here from Britain
Oh, yeah.
as a science researcher.
As a researcher, yeah.
And
Has she got papers now?
Yes.
she does.
Oh, that's great.
She's been here 10 years.
Yeah.
She was about to become exported
Wow.
because she didn't have a green
Yeah.
card. I would think it would, the credentials are just.
Oh, no, ma'am, there's no, I mean, believe me, I would be here.
But let me tell you,
There's no-
our daughter-in-law's credentials.
Yeah.
That's what did it. That's what did it.
And we got Senator Grassley
Oh,
involved.
I
Did
tried
you
it.
contact Grassley?
Well, I came out as undocumented 6 months ago, so.
Go.
No, ma'am,
Senator
we
Grassley.
talked to Senator Durbin, this is not something that can just happen.
I know, but we've been through this.
Oh yeah, no, I've been undocumented since I was 12. There's thousands of other stories like mine. And again, we're here. We want to be tax-paying citizens. We are tax-paying people. What do we do with us? So this is what I want to talk about.
So you haven't talked to Grassley yet?
I'm not protesting. I'm not. Yeah, so I'm gonna say, I'm not causing any ruckus. I'm simply asking a question. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Walk us off, because we walk, that's fine.
Are you a police
Yes,
officer?
I'm the police officer.
Oh, see, wait, I'm listening for. I'm gonna cut that out. So, I don't know if you heard when you were asking me why don't I go back in line to Mexico? And I'm like, I'm Filipino. Oh, I don't know if you captured that. So, and then the film actually goes to Manila. I decided to send a film crew to the Philippines to film my mom. So, as you can imagine, it's been kind of weird. I've been editing my mom for 6 months. I've seen more of my mom in an editing room than I have in 20 years. And the film is kind of, it's dedicated to her. And I guess when we ask about the theme of today is thinking about the future and solving unsolvable problems, I think I'm really heartened by the fact that you've seen like such a bright Filipino American community thinking about the Philippines and thinking about issues like education and globalization and what I would also hope is that you start asking questions about why you got here and why you're here. And I would also hope that in this very critical time, you get involved. There isn't anybody in this country that I will not talk to. when it comes to this issue. I'm about, starting next week, I'm gonna start like a 30-state tour of the country. Wisconsin, Ohio, Kansas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Iowa. Engaging with as many conservatives and as many Americans as I possibly can. And sometimes it pains me when I can't even engage with my own community. So I would just urge you, as you think of the next day and for making it better, to be involved and to not take the privilege of being here, of having been born here, of having papers for granted. So please check out DefineAmerica.com. We're going to be having a big premiere here in New York, I think the next month and a half. And thank you for the support. Thank you. He thinks that immigration reform is dead this year. Syria and the debt ceiling and Obamacare. Apparently our politicians can't chew gum and eat at the same time, so they can only focus on one issue at a time. I refuse to believe that. I think that's why it's really, really important that we have grassroots support and that people in communities and districts and congressional districts call their Congress people and create as much noise as possible to insist that people like us can't wait, right? People can't wait. I personally can't wait. And just one thing about that, like, so, you know, when I found out I was undocumented, I was really mad at my whole family. I didn't understand why my mom and my grandparents didn't tell me this. So I kind of pushed them away for like a good 8 years or so. Like any Filipino, I send money to the Philippines every month to support my mom and her 2 kids. She's since had 2 kids. And I thought that was enough. I thought I could just send her money by a box and send her money and be done with it. Don't talk on the phone, it's too painful. How do you even talk about that? 20 years. And so it's been really interesting for me when the footage got back from the Philippines, like staring at my mother and realizing that I kept this woman waiting for 20 years. Like, I don't know how long I can keep doing this. You know, like I'm kind of, when Martin Luther King says the fierce urgency of now, that's kind of how I feel. And that's why I get really disgruntled sometimes when, even within my own Filipino family, you know, people who are born in this country and just kind of take it for granted, that don't even realize the privilege that they have. So I'm going to keep kind of doing this. I'm hoping that within the next year I get documented, and I made a movie out of it. So I figured, we're going to do about 100 screenings in October and November all across the country. So I'm really looking forward to that.
One last question.
One last question. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. My name is Louis, aspiring journalist.
Oh, great.
I apologize if I'm being ignorant on immigration. I definitely want to get involved now. But how is it now you were able to do all this? You're making noise with this protest, not protest.
Oh no, it's protest.
But they're not. But no one said the police or anybody did want to bring border patrol or anything like that.
It's funny you say that. So when I came out, the only thing they did was take away my driver's license, so I can't drive anymore. But it was my only piece of ID, right? I don't have any other ID. So thankfully, the Philippine embassy here in Manhattan actually gave me a Filipino passport, my first real passport. But it doesn't have a visa on it. So that's my ID. So I literally, my only piece of ID right now is my Bank of America debit card, the Filipino passport, and the Time magazine cover. So tomorrow, I'm flying out tomorrow to Charlotte, North Carolina. So when I go to JFK, the only ID that I show is the Filipino passport. Now, if the TSA guy flips it around, but since I look the way that I do, right, and I speak the way that I do, right, if I were brown, if I were darker, if I look Mexican, they would probably be more inclined to check the ID, but no one ever does. Now, mind you, I actually, when I was writing the cover story for Time magazine, I actually called the government myself. I said, "Hi, Jose, I'm writing a story. I haven't heard from you. What's up?" And that's in the film. Are you going to deport me? Why? Why not? I'm not kidding around. But the answer from the government was no comment. And I think in many ways that's a metaphor for how our country thinks about people like me. You know we're here. serving you food at Chipotle, we're picking up the strawberries and the tomatoes, we go to colleges with you, go to the same church with you. You know we're here, but you would just rather not talk about it. No comment. Well, that's unacceptable. So that's the goal in the next few months. So thanks again.